Point number 1. When you hear someone longing for the good old days, take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. We live in a great nation, and we are rightly proud of our history. We are beneficiaries of the labor and the grit and the courage of generations who came before. But I guess it's part of human nature, especially in times of change and uncertainty, to want to look backward and long for some imaginary past when everything worked, and the economy humid, and all politicians were wise, and every child was well mannered, and America pretty much did whatever it wanted around the world. Guess what? It ain't so. The good old days weren't that good. Yes, there have been some stretches in our history where the economy grew much faster, or when government ran more smoothly. There were moments when, immediately after World War II, for example, or the end of the Cold War, when the world been more easily to our will. But those are sporadic. Those moments, those episodes, in fact, by almost every measure, America is better, and the world is better than it was 50 years ago, or 13 years ago, or even 8 years ago. And by the way, I'm not. Set aside 150 years ago, pre-Civil War, there's a whole bunch of stuff there we could talk about. Set aside, live in 15, when women and people of color were systematically excluded from big chunks of American life. Since I graduated in 1983, which isn't that long ago, I'm just saying, since I graduated, crime rates, teenage pregnancy, the share of Americans living in poverty, they are all down. The share of Americans with college education have gone way up. Our life expectancy has, as well. Black and Latinos have risen up the ranks in business and politics. More women are in the workforce. They are earning more money. Although it's long past time that we pass laws to make sure that women are getting the same pay for the same work as men. Meanwhile, in the 8 years since most of you start high school, we are also better off. You and your fellow graduates are entering the job market with better prospects than any time since 2007. 20 million more Americans know the financial security of health insurance. We are less dependent on foreign oil. We've doubled the production of clean energy. We have cut the high school dropout rate. We've cut the deficit by 2/3. Marriage equality is the law of the land. And just as America is better, the world is better than when I graduated. Since I graduated, an Iron Curtain fell, apartheid ended, there's more democracy. We virtually eliminated certain diseases like polio. We've cut extreme poverty drastically. We've cut infant mortality by an enormous amount. Now, I say all these things not to make you complain. We've got a bunch of big problems to solve. But I say to point out that change has been a constant in our history. And the reason America is better is because we didn't look backward. We didn't fear the future. We seized the future and made it our own. And that's exactly what it's always been young people like you that have wrote about big change. Because you don't fear the future. That leads me to my second point. The world is more interconnected than even before, and it's becoming more connected every day. Building walls won't change that. Look, as president, my first responsibility is always the security and prosperity of the United States. And as citizens, we are rightly put our country first. But if the past two decades two decades have taught us anything, is that the biggest challenge we face cannot be solved in isolation. When overseas states start falling apart, they become breeding grounds for terrorists and ideologies of nihilism and despair that ultimately can reach our shores. When developing countries don't have functional health system, epidemics like Zika or Ebola can spread and threaten Americans too. And a war won't stop that. If we want to close loopholes that allow large corporations and wealthy individuals to avoid paying their fair share of tax, we've got to have the cooperation of other countries in a global financial system to help enforce financial laws. The point is, to help ourselves, we got to help others, not pull up the drawbridge and try to keep the war out.